Ron is actually late today. Yep. I'm going to use the gavel. Hi, everyone. I love the gavel. So we are going to call our meeting to order, even though we are missing one counselor still who just lives probably too far away to be here on time. So we want to thank everyone for being here today and recognize that we are holding our meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Hoopachasit and Sishot First Nations. And we will have adoption of the minutes. Is there a seconder? Second, any questions on the minutes from the November 19th meeting? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to approve the agenda today. Would somebody like to move approval of the agenda?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Second, all in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, so today is a bit of a different meeting in that we always hope to have engagement from the community in our committee of the whole meetings. But this meeting really came as an idea during the campaign, and somebody said to me in a conversation, well, it's a shame that we have to pick, one mayoral candidate and 6 council candidates because there are so many people who have great ideas, and they felt that they had met a lot of people who could represent our community well. And in talking to council over the last couple of months, we've talked a lot about how to get the input from the rest of the people who ran, because although you may not have been elected, you all engaged with people in the community and had great ideas, and we wanted to find a way to kind of hear those ideas in a formal way. So we are very thankful to those of you who have come today. And just to give people an idea of what the format of our meeting is going to be, we are going to first hear from the people who ran for council and mayor, and then we're going to hear from council, and then we're going to give an opportunity for anybody in the public who wants to come up and give their input on these 3 questions that we have to ask, or ask anything additional. So the 3 questions that we came up with for today were, what were the top three community issues or challenges that you heard from the public during the election? What were the top 3 opportunities we heard from the public during the election? And for the people who weren't elected, if you had been elected, what would be one initiative you would hope to accomplish by the end of your term? So with all of that said, would anybody out there like to go first? I think I'm seeing Michael Moore.
He was doing this, so he was saying yes.
Come on up.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm really good at podiums.
You're great at the podium.
So it's the questions themselves, may not have necessarily an answer to all 3 of them. But for me, the biggest thing I heard from people when I was failing, sorry, just in case anybody from the peaks here, where it really came down to is people felt disconnected from how city government works, how ethereal policy is created and then, disseminated down to the populace. They don't see a real world engagement or change in their existence and their day-to-day life. People, a guy gets his lawnmower stolen, doesn't want to know about the crime policy, just wants his lawnmower back, right? The other thing I saw from people or heard from people was Port Alberni just looks run down, right? It just looks kind of gritty, and there's a lot of general maintenance things that seem to be kind of lost on our everyday, right? We have a great beautification project down Johnston Street, beautiful garden beds and everything like that, and you take a turn off that street and there's chipped paint and worn out and kind of beat up. Like we focused all of our attention on such a tiny little strip. Corner of, what is that? Redford and 3rd. Got a nice little park bench there, and then across the street's pawn shop and motel, and as you keep going down there, it's just dusty and dirty and kind of beat up. And these are real world things. Like, people don't have a sense of pride in what they see there. So, and the final thing, I guess, really, my biggest emphasis on the top 3 challenges I saw was how people can come up here and talk, right? It's not a conversation. You come up and you have a rule where you can't ask a question at the end of it. It's just difficult for people to engage with it. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Top three. I'm
going to actually, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm thinking maybe we should hear from everyone on challenges first and then move to opportunities. How about that, Michael? You're going to stay, right? You're going to come up here 3 times. I think that's what I'm saying. Yes.
Him next, Santa.
Thank you. Just because I found that very helpful, actually. And so maybe we can hear everyone's challenges first that they see.
Also, the main challenge was getting hockey tickets to the big game. Especially because the online tickets have the wrong date.
Oh, no. Thank you, Michael. Todd, would you like to come next?
Sure. Maybe you only get one chance. I'm not honestly sure I have all that much to add that's going to be of any of use. I was a little intrigued by the concept of this meeting, and so I made some assumptions about its purpose. The assumptions I made were that it was a motion by the City Council to reach out and be inclusive, which I thought would be a very good purpose. Subsequent to that, I had some reservations about the concept of asking the questions in this manner. What were the top 3 community issues and challenges? Well, I was at the same meetings all of you were at. So asking me what I heard seems to be a little bit dismissive of what you heard. And this is the council that was elected and should have a mandate. So not the top 3 things I heard, but the top 1 thing personally I would be interested as an elector and voter is that the council has a mandate, so let's get moving on your mandate. What is your mandate? And if you don't know already what the people that elected you want, what good is asking other people that were at the same meeting as you? Having said that, the 3 things I heard are less crime, more housing, lower taxes. And actually, I probably heard that not only from individuals I spoke to who were looking to vote for a certain candidate, but also from the candidates themselves. So again, I reiterate my previous comments. If you have a mandate, let's get going on it.
Thank you for that. So just to comment, although there were a few community meetings, the campaign was probably 4 months long for a lot of people. And beyond community meetings, I personally knocked on 1,000 doors. So there was a lot that went on in the election beyond just those meetings. And I think it's really important for us to hear if what I heard as the community's top issue is the same as what you heard, or if there were completely different issues. For me, the top issue was housing, no matter where I went. But I know that on council, that's not necessarily the same issue that everyone heard. But thanks for that. Aaron, do you want to come next?
Mike hit it bang on with a lot of the stuff. I really agree. I think we're all in the same room, Todd, for sure. So a lot of the issues that we all heard were the same. A lot of the reasons behind them, especially over the 4 months, were different. Myself being one of the younger guys running, I noticed there's had to be I can say a solid between 50 and 100 people voted that have never voted before. That's a couple full-time, old folk care facilities full of people, not now, but later. They didn't know about the YouTube. They didn't know about the stuff. And housing was number 1. A lot of the guys are employed. A lot of those people are employed, but they're not mortgageably employed. They're just scraping by. So we're not talking about low income housing or anything like that. We're talking about just regular price of housing and how a guy's going to get by with their jobs. Everybody wants to see lower crime. Everybody wants to see lower taxes. One of the other things was that a lot of the people, especially where we come from, a lot of my particular friends, one of the things that was brought up was more of a trust issue. And like Michael said, like people not understanding how this whole works, I'll be the first to admit fault. When I first started to approach council, let's go back 3 or 4 years now, I was not the most pleasant character to deal with. Not at all. I'll be the first guy to say that. And a lot of it, even to this day, is still understanding how these processes work. A lot of, even when I was running, I really wanted to see, in particular with the Dog Mountain Brewing, just to help those guys speed the process along, was temporary permits. I probably ran for council 4 years too early. I should have sat and watched for the next 4 years to become more informed on how these processes work, because those temporary things that I was talking about already exist. And I noticed that when we discussed the Colson's use of the Zellers building, I'm like, oh, okay. And, you know, I really thank you guys for not just targeting me on my weak sides, right? Because I would have just been like, pew, 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 pew. Come back in 4 years, Sonny. And it's nice to be able to take the time and learn about it. But the people that I talked to didn't know how to build trust, how to do stuff. And we all come from, every single person I talked to has a different background. Myself, I've had some trust issues with council, right? I was told to invest 21 grand and then told, sorry, first come, first serve. That's an issue that I have to get over, but I can't bitch if I'm not willing to get out and learn, get out and try, and make the mistakes first. So I've got lots of ideas like the crosswalks and stuff where I can try and contribute to make it better. We'll get on to that part. But for the most part, yeah, it's housing, but not just the low income or the senior care, but housing on the whole level, and how we're gonna make the jobs. Like, people are hiring right now. One of my friends went to get a job today, $13 an hour. $13 an hour is what they're hiring for in town. Guy's trying to pay $1,500 a month in rent. It's not hard to do the math. It's gonna be real tight. So, you know, I got ideas to do it, but because of my background and I don't have a lot of income. I didn't inherit any properties, and I don't have any stuff. I'm really good at saving money, whether it's creative ideas, creative financing. Some of the ideas don't always fly with council. I've posted them. I'm not shy about like letting the ideas fly. Some of them don't even work. It's okay, we'll figure it out. But some of the previous mayoral positions or candidates that were running may have came from a background where they were given a budget. And I don't come from a place where this is my budget, I need to spend it all so I get it next year. And that form of thinking doesn't even apply in my world. If I know I only have $100, that's it. My budget isn't $1.50. It's 95, because you still have to save a couple bucks if a guy can. So I'm really creative with the budget. I thought I could help with some of the thinking around it, and we'll get to the pros later, but thanks. And I really appreciate the idea of having everybody come forward and kind of contribute. The inclusiveness, it's appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having us. This is really a great opportunity. I'm so pleased that you guys thought to do this. One of the, I'll reiterate, everybody's saying the same thing. We heard the same issues. For me, it's been 10 years I've been coming in front of Council, and my issue has never really waned, and it is a strong issue that's tied to everything, and I really feel economic stagnation is one of the biggest issues that we're having in the community. A lot of people are feeling opportunities aren't there for them, and we also are struggling with third generation unemployment. We have unemployment in this community started in the 70s, and it has transitioned down through generations of community members who haven't, through education or opportunities missed, haven't been able to transition. And we've lost a lot of our talent in our community because they've had to leave and they haven't been here to build our community. So making opportunity, making economic opportunity, building businesses that are relevant, and also building businesses that are relevant to the community's abilities and skill set that we have got left in the community. And that's been one of the issues that I've most dealt with and tried to get across. And it has been the thing that carried me the most. Most people ask me to keep on fighting that good fight. I know when I ran for council, I should have continued running for council, but when I ran for mayor, I was trying to get more voice out there. I knew I didn't have a great chance at it, and even in this last time, I knew that I wasn't really the lead runner in it, but I was really trying to advocate for business models and planning and the virtue of actually looking towards the future with people of the lowest rung of education and skill set being given an opportunity. Even if we built a brand new mill tomorrow or a brand new factory tomorrow, we'd likely have to outsource almost all of that labor. And we wouldn't actually help the communities that's unemployed, also causing us most of our social issues, and our crime issues are all kind of welled into that. So the main issue that I had to deal with, and again, you know, the three topics are all current. The main issue really is making economic availability to the community at large is really one of the most paramount things we have to look at. And thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Chris?
Thanks for this. Thank you for doing this. I do think it's really good to have the inclusion of all the ideas from the campaign. So it's really great that you're being open about it. Again, like others have said, homelessness, the opioid addiction crisis, all of that, everything that goes around that is by far, I think, the number one issue. I did provide my comments written form because I wasn't sure if I was going to be here, so they'll be in there too. But the other ones around economic transition, like Kevin said, I heard over and over again that Port Alberni is in this kind of in-between place right now, where we're in a transition from our traditional, and we've been in the transition for 30 years, from that traditional resource-based economy to something else, and we're not there yet. And people are really trying to envision that and try to figure out what that means for the community. So that was a big one for me. And the other one, just because I had to put it out there, and there's lots of people always talking about, is McLean Mill, because that's always a huge issue, and it'll continue to be. But the biggest one, I think, is just, and it ties into the housing crisis and opioid addiction and unemployment, is that transition piece. How can we, like other communities have done on the island, be able to transition our economy into something that's more sustainable? That's it.
Thank you. Council, starting with, oh, did John come in? Yeah. Oh, I can't see you back there. John, come on up. Thanks for coming, John.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for doing this. Hi, everybody. So I want to applaud all of you, first of all, for taking this first step. One of the issues, like you've asked to name 3 issues, there's a lot more than 3, but you got to keep it simple. So one of the major issues I ran across actually was accessibility to participating in council and the decisions that are made, and the fact that it's just it could be less formal, put it that way. Like this meeting here today is way too formal in my sort of way of looking at things, and I know you have to take that first step, so hopefully you'll get there over the next few years and start introducing less formal methods in which people can interact with council. So like Michael, and has this love of the podium, so people who don't have the love of the podium are still able to get out, and the people out on the street that are working out there that are able to get out and talk to you. So one of the things we had previously was like coffee with council, coffee with mayor, things along those lines. It was brought up to me quite frequently from people, those people on council. It's sort of like you're up in this upper echelon somewhere, and people, they don't feel comfortable coming into a setting like this, right? Look, you're all so quiet, and I'm getting nervous standing up here, so that was one of the, if we just start, just sort of relaxing around a table and starting to talk about issues, I think that's one way that we could really sort of lighten up things and make people, so you can get all their ideas. Right, so that was one issue. The other thing is, I think this whole transition thing is a bunch of crap. Quite frankly, like every healthy community, at least a healthy community, is always going to be in transition, and we have to be flexible and live in that transition. So, like it sort of implies we're going to get to a place where we don't have to be in transition anymore. And I think that's one of the mistakes that the previous economic high time of Port Alberni made, is they were sort of at this level of massive success on one economy and they weren't transitioning. You see it happening all over the world now in the Middle East and stuff. People are all dependent on oil, Alberta. So, but that's just a little side thing, the transition thing. We need to have flexibility. So the first thing was accessibility to council. The other thing was housing, like people have already mentioned. That was like really number one. And housing, because, you know, when you hear these things, you also sort of form opinions as you're listening to people. And one of the opinions I formed was it was really housing. And when people mention crime and things, a lot of that emanated from the fact of the housing shortage that we have, right? So it was really a lot of housing on both ends. So like the low end sector of housing was a huge issue that was brought up again and again and again. And the other one that was really quite frequent was the seniors level, you know, and how we get 50% of the beds at the hospital are full of people. I met one just the other day who'd been in the hospital for 4 months waiting to get into Fir Park, you know, so that kind of thing. So housing. And then the other thing was, I got it on my phone here. I didn't really come with 3 distinct things, but yeah, I had it. So, and then, yeah, just ECDev, so economic development in different sectors. And I was surprised at how common the belief was that in terms of forestry, that those days are gone. Like people were commonly voicing that to me. Like we have to move on into other sectors and start developing other economic paths to depend on. So they weren't saying like just forget about forestry, but they were saying we shouldn't really be looking there for, you know, like big miracles to happen. Develop it as we can, but look at other sectors for ECDev. So that was sort of 3. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Okay. Council. So going to give council an opportunity to answer the same question, although just so everyone's aware, I didn't completely make it clear that council was going to have to answer these questions as well. I thought they would assume, so I did warn them an hour ago.
Where was I?
I don't know where you were. So, however many things council would like to comment on as what the main challenges are that they heard. Just an opportunity for each of us to hear feedback directly. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I guess the big things were affordable housing was at the top of the, crime was actually at the top of the list because we were going through our crime and what we could do to reduce that crime, affordable housing, and then coming in a third would have been McLean Mill. And we're addressing the McLean Mill issue, but I'm thinking, you know, if we can get all these gentlemen today have had brilliant ideas, and it's to get the quality of life in Port Alberni up, to get it from being what it is right now to a better quality of life, make it more livability, make it a nicer place, and then suddenly, you know, Joe Lunchbucket's got a job and he's got a place to live, so he's not out stealing your lawnmower and it's things like that. So it's thing we've got to work on in baby steps, but affordable housing, crime, McLean Mill were the 3 ones that I got nailed with the most.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say it's great to see a lot of you here, because the one thing I took away from the election was the relationships that I established during the campaign. So great to see you guys again. The top 3 community issues challenges, I actually have 4. Affordable housing, unemployment, and crime, and those 3 are all interrelated. So I think as we get more housing online, and there's lots online right now that you'll see coming in the next year or 2, I think you will see a decrease in our unemployment and a decrease in crime in the community. And one that I heard a lot, which I'm surprised hasn't been mentioned yet, is a lot of the vacant buildings on 3rd Avenue. I heard that comment an awfully lot during the campaign, that something has to be done. I know Kevin has some great ideas, so hopefully we can work with you and the new business center and help resolve that issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson. Apparently I did not tell Councillor Paulson he would need to do this.
Actually, I'd like your thoughts on the public meetings that we had, and certainly there were a lot of good questions, but when I looked into those crowds, I realized that there was a silent majority that doesn't come to those meetings, and you know, several of the friends that I kind of hang with and are business people, and they're part of that silent majority, and certainly their concern is about maintaining our economy as it is now and growing our economy. And it may allude to, all of these are little pieces of the puzzle. I mean, people say, if you're throwing your hat into the tourism market, you know, you're kind of breathing through your ears sort of thing. Well, it's not all about the tourism market. It's about that piece of the puzzle that can contribute to the overall health of your community. So it could be tourism, it could be a new manufacturing plant, it could be any number of those things that you can piece together and the small business thing. And how do we attract entrepreneurs? I mean, we've got empty space, but we need entrepreneurs to fill those empty spaces. The other one that I heard is people are absolutely sick and tired of us being known as a stinky old mill town. And we have not made pulp in this town for probably 30 years. And that change of image comes from within. We as citizens, if we become proud of our community and sell our community and sell who we are and the vibrant community that I think we are, we need to get ourselves talked into shedding that stigma. And when I'm visiting my relatives in Alberta, I say, best place in Canada to live. You come and visit, you know, and certainly they do in the summertime because it's an island in the Pacific. But those are just a couple of things. I mean, housing is certainly an issue, and I think there's a number of things that are coming on stream here with the shelter moving along really quickly. I know that ECOS has a project that's coming up pretty quick, and you know, there's that category that you're talking about, the affordable housing. That's going to be addressed here over the next year or two. So we might be kind of slow in addressing that, but we are getting there, gang. And crime is an issue, and you know, I just live up here on 6th Avenue, and it's amazing the difference from 3rd Avenue to 6th Avenue, the difference in 6 blocks. Like I don't experience any of that up at 6th Avenue. I live right kitty corner of the Paramount Theater, but the people down on 3rd Avenue, 3rd and Argyle, they're just getting hit like every day. And it's I live on one of the safest blocks because the Crown Prosecutor lives on my block. I got a retired RCMP officer that's my neighbor, so I'm good. But those are just a couple of my observations, and it does pay us to kind of go and drop into the flower shop and talk to them, and that's their silent majority that we really don't hear a lot from. So unaccustomed to a microphone as I am.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Thank you. So when I listen to everybody out here, we all have the same, and they all tie together, our same thoughts and that, what we heard through the election. And I heard affordable housing, and I'm talking about for all ages. And I'm not talking about just to purchase a home. I'm talking about for renters. I know so many people who are couch surfing because they can't afford the rent. Kids live in their homes with their parents longer. I don't have the empty nest syndrome because I have one at home. Who can afford to rent an apartment at $1,500 or $1,000 or $800 right now at $13 an hour in rent? And those jobs are really important, don't get me wrong. So that ties into the economics. And I'm talking about a little higher pay, affordable wages, affordable living wage. And some First Nation governments have adopted that, but not all of us have adopted affordable living wage. And I think that would help with paying the rent. But then again, we have a scarce place for apartments by renting an apartment, and that you look online, there's no apartments. You might get the odd apartment coming up for a rent, and again, you can't afford it because you don't have a living wage. The next is McLean's Mill. I've heard everything about McLean's Mill in the last while. I've taken a tour of McLean's Mill, and I know we're going to have a meeting just on McLean's Mill in the future, so stand by for that one. And that should be most interesting. So I think everything ties together for what we all believe and we all say. And we're very passionate in what we all believe in. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
I think from the forums and the meet and greets that I attended, the big issues were housing, crime, addiction issues. I think my circle of friends, probably the bigger issue was unemployment, which possibly the other issues stem from. McLean's Mill is brought up an awful lot, as well as has been said, the livability. And to me, that's the empty lots, the empty buildings, the buildings that look like they came out of Beirut. Something, and we'll get to how we work on those things. But I believe there are some things starting to happen that can make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Poon.
Well, I heard a lot about housing, as everyone's already spoken about. I've heard a lot about our economy, which, of course, everyone else has spoken about already, and a lot about addiction. So I'm not sure I have a ton to add.
That's fine. Thank you. So my turn. The top issues that I heard, and I think I have more than 3, but the number one issue I heard no matter where I went was housing, and anywhere from, seniors care housing, issues with, people staying in the hospital long term, young families. I spoke to a young woman who had a 3-year-old son and had been evicted from her rental property because it had sold, and she was going to be hadn't found anywhere to go, so she was going to sleep on a friend's couch, and had no hope of finding anywhere to go, in her opinion. So really, like, across the board, drastic need for housing. And for me, after spending 4 years on council, and as a council, we talked very little about housing, in my opinion. That was really surprising for me to hear that no matter where I went, the top issue was housing. It made me kind of realize that we can sometimes lose sight of what the community's issues are when we kind of work forward as a council. So I think opportunities like this are really important for the community to come and remind us what's most important to them. The next thing that I heard a ton about was, engaging with council, what that looks like, what it feels like, why people don't engage with council, and everything from, how formal the process is to not understanding the process. And I think as a council, that's incredibly important for us to hear and for us to remember. I agree that meetings like this are too formal. We need to figure out other ways to engage people. I think social media has a huge part in that, but certainly not everyone is on social media. But remembering when people come to our meetings because they have something they want to talk to council about, remembering that they might not know what that actually looks like. When somebody comes because a property they own is on our agenda, they don't know that they can't just stick up their hand partway through the meeting and talk about it, that they have to get up at the beginning of the meeting. Sometimes when people want to renovate a house, they don't know that they need a permit or how to get a permit. So just the concept of not understanding how the city works, I heard about regularly. And I think that as a city, that's an opportunity for us as well, because if we take the time to educate people on our processes, I think we have a lot to gain. Economic diversification was something that I heard a lot. Really just, the mentality that what we've been doing is not working, needing to target new sectors of the economy. The reputation, I heard a ton about being a stinky mill town. Of course, I think we all know that's not what we are, but I heard over and over and over that the direction sometimes that we pursue as a council, or not as a council, but as a city, furthers that reputation. So that was something that I heard frequently. Reconciliation, and maybe not used as a word reconciliation, but improving the need to improve relationships with First Nations, local First Nations, and kind of all of the Nuu-chah-nulth nations around us was a prevalent topic that I heard over and over and over, and what that really looks like. So building real relationships with our local First Nations and looking for opportunities to pursue jointly together. And then lastly, and I think that's only four, was beautification, and really 6? I don't think it was 6, but thank you. So beautification and pride of place, and really needing to clean up our community, to hold ourselves to a higher standard, to not just accept any development, but the right developments for our community. And build a town that we can all be incredibly proud of. So those are definitely the themes of what I heard. I heard other things as well, like McLean Mill and empty buildings and crime. And I kind of lump crime and addictions and housing together. I know they're not all one issue, and unemployment, but I do think that they all kind of stem from each other. And when we start to make progress in one, we'll make progress in more areas. So although, this is primarily to hear from people who ran in the last election, would anyone in the public like to comment further? Come on up, Neil.
Got a jumble of notes here that I can't even understand myself, but anyway. Dr. Anderson, right? A couple of comments on just 3 things, because I won't take up too much time. I think this is a great idea. During the election process, I talked to a number of people about after 3-4 years, you're sometimes not aware of how the different councillors think. And this is a big step forward in satisfying that concern of mine. And I hope the trend continues. I think it will. Affordable housing. I think there's a lot of people that would be more open to making their houses available as partly rental units, but they don't. And I fully understand, because I've heard some of the horror stories. It's all right to get people in there. In Port Alberni, it's very hard to get good tenants, and therefore you have a lot of rental suites that are not quality, and people should not be living in them. But however, if you have a tenant that refuses to pay the rent, it's next near impossible to get them out. The rental board seems to support them, and comments that I hear is, what way will they go if we evict them? And so this is discouraging some people from making available some very good accommodation in this town, as they do in other places. The choice of getting good tenants is very difficult. We have in the past talked about Port Alberni as being a retirement place, and I think we were premature in talking about this as a retirement destination, because we don't have the backing that we need for seniors. It's a huge problem provincially. It's not just common to Port Alberni. And so I think we have to move forward with the accommodation, but it's a provincial problem, and we need support from the province more so than we can with the situation that we can deal ourselves, housing them in extended care, acute buildings, and etc. And even senior homes. Or again, that's housing them in a house. They have to have the proper facilities to do that, access and locality. There was something else here. I must be relaxing up here. I can take my time. I don't rush myself anymore.
It's your spot.
But my biggest point that I've come out, because all the parts are taxes. Oh man, a huge thing. Between taxes, your assessments for water, which is taxes, whether we want to recognize that or not, And insurance for your housing makes it next to near impossible for some seniors to afford to live in their house. It's a hard push because we don't get 2.5% increases every year. So those are the main issues, but the one I am encouraged with is that issue about getting to know your council members. I think that's a huge thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy?
Hello. Didn't realize I'd get a chance to say anything. I just thought I'd come and sit in and to see if there were any overlaps in between the issues that are brought up by yourselves and the former candidates and New Channel Tribal Council. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Andy Calicum. I'm the elected vice president for New Channel Tribal Council, and we provide programs, services, and political advocacy for just over 10,000 New Channel members. Just over 3,000 of our members live off reserve here in Port Alberni. So that doesn't include our members that live on reserve on Sashot and on reserve in Hupitchisitt. About 3,000, just over 3,000 live off reserve here in the city. And because of that, I've been trying to be active and proactive in just trying to identify opportunities where there could be items where we can help each other out. So prime example would be back in January, Mayor Rattan had mentioned issues around policing and policing costs. And following that, Mike Rattan and I decided to start meeting to talk about policing, and I became well aware of the issue, well aware of the cost that policing has to Port Alberni taxpayers. My understanding is that it was highest in the province, despite the fact that we have the lowest median income in the province. So that's been one hot and button issue that I've, over the past year, been working with the city and trying to advocate with the federal and provincial governments on. And again, housing, the crime rates, opioid, all of the stuff that people have been bringing up is things that I have on my radar as well. I think it's potentially items that we can start meeting together on. The Tribal Council has a lot of potential and a lot of capacity. So we have just over 200 employees, a lot of which are health and mental health employees. And also, just to speak to the housing issue that was brought up, I think a good reason why it hasn't been an issue for council over the years is because the rates went up so high, like the rental rates. I remember moving out of Port Alberni about 5 years ago. At the time, I was an employment counselor, and I did spend a lot of time helping people to find rentals when they were at risk or actually homeless. And back then, between then and now, I've noticed that the rental prices have gone up about 50–60%. It's gone up quite a bit over the last 3–4 years, and I think that's probably the main reason why you haven't seen it as a big theme for council, but I definitely see it as a huge issue, in particular for New Channel members. I keep an eye on the Facebook groups for rentals, and I'm really disheartened when I see that we've got members, New Channel members, that have been looking for housing for over a year, are employed, and they still haven't found any. For me, myself, it took 2 months of searching for a house for a rental before I got one. And for our president, Judith Sayers, she told me that she was 45th person that applied for the house that she got into eventually. So a lot of barriers, even for those of us that are gainfully employed. And definitely something that's on my radar. If you'd like to talk housing, that's absolutely something that myself as part of the Tribal Council would like to be a part of as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Andy, for coming. We really appreciate it. It's important to have more boards and governments working together on issues like this. We really do overlap probably in a lot of areas. And I think that you and I have a meeting on Friday. So we will talk housing Friday. Would anyone else from the public like to comment? Coming up.
Ian Thomas, and I just wanted to say that I really keyed on to one of the things that Kevin said. We need to think about the people that are here when we're looking at our economic development and really look at the inventory of skills that the community has and how can we better utilize those skills to be productive in our world.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Come on up.
If Michael thinks he likes a mic, I love it. You've obviously seen me up here before. You know, I've been listening. I listened through the election, and I don't put the problem of housing on your guys' heads, unless you're going to build a bunch of houses. It's got to go back to where it belongs, and that's onto the owners. Whether it's through taxing them heavy, I know you brought an empty house syndrome type tax out, triple it. You know, like really hit the people where it belongs. The rental situation, I've done a lot of work for people that have moved into houses and out of houses. And the renters, yeah, they can trash a place, but the landlords don't treat them very well either. There's very few in this town that ever get their damage deposit back, even when there's no damage. You know, they just figure they're losers. The other thing I look at too, and this is like, it's not just Port Alberni. This is all over the place. States, like, you know, and everybody yells and screams about housing, housing, housing. I don't know what the answer is yet. I know what they did in, I think it's in, is it in Tofino? Where, like, we have a lot of developers in this town, but they develop $500,000-$600,000 homes. You know, for every few of those, maybe they should have to build a low-cost housing one. I know Tofino has that right in their bylaws, I believe. I think. I could be wrong, but I'm sure Osborne, is it? I think she talked about that once. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Because, like, it's nice to, I look at Bird Street, you know, all the subdivisions that are going in there, and we got empty lots in town here that something could be built on if they want to develop. So I'm thinking that we have to rein them in a little. I don't want to see them lose money or leave town, but rein them in a little bit. Like, you know, people ask me, why don't you run for town? I said, no, I won't do that. I enjoy what I do. I get up here once in a while, bitch and complain or whatever. The opioid crisis, that's not your problem. It's not my problem. All I hear is we have an opioid crisis. We don't have an opioid crisis. The people that use opiates do. And I've been clean and sober now for 30-some years, so I've worked with lots of drug addicts and alcoholics. Doesn't matter what you do for them, they're not going to change until they want to. You know, and when the powers to be get that in their head, you know, then, because we got to pull back a little bit. You know, I know it causes crime, it causes this, it causes that. It doesn't matter what we do. Until they want to do it, they're not going to do nothing about it. So it's not really, it is our problem, but it isn't. It's kind of a catch-22 situation. I mean, I've dealt with lots of drug addicts and talked to them and spent time with them and everything else and done all the stuff that you have to do, and they go right back out and use. It's their problem. And that's where we have to put it, is in their hands. Unfortunately. I'm not a hardcore, you know, but I'm a realist when it comes to that. It's like, it was my problem when I was doing it. I mean, I was one of the worst. I was terrible. But it was my problem. It wasn't my parents' problem. It wasn't the town's problem. It wasn't the counselor's problem. You know, so I don't know what the answer is on that. It bothers me, you know, people are dying left and right. But they're choosing that. The town is not forcing that on them. You know, so I'd like to see a lot of less time spent on it. And then maybe sometimes if you leave something alone a little bit, it'll fix itself. Don't know if that makes any sense, but it does work. So, you know, and I could go on and on about McLean's Mill, but you guys already know how I feel about that. You know, so I just think that it's going to cost a lot of money to clean up that pond. It doesn't matter how many thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think you guys are looking at a rate. I don't think the ratepayers want that. But I'm glad you're going to have a special meeting on it. But keep it, that one should be a formal meeting. Otherwise, you're going to have... Yes, exactly. Anyways, thanks.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that we don't have a vacant home tax, just so that you're aware, because that's something that has been talked about. But I think we actually don't have the ability under the community charter to have a vacant home tax, as businesses are somewhat different. But yeah. maybe businesses are not different. I don't know. Well, we can't under the community charter. Unfortunately. Yeah, well, we can't change the charter. But anyways. So that's not something we currently have. And I think the only other thing to add there is that a lot of the issues that we talk about are not issues that the city is responsible for. And so we don't necessarily want to, we don't want to overstep on what other levels of government and other agencies are doing. But we want to know what the issues are, because quite often there's a place for the city at the table, or, you know, to be aware of the issues. Sometimes there is, like when we talk about housing, I think that the city's role is through advocacy to bring housing into the community. And on top of that, there are areas where we can directly increase housing by making secondary suites accessible for people to do and that kind of thing. So knowing what the issues are, even if they're not necessarily our issues, can be a big part of the solution.
I agree.
Would anyone else like to comment? Okay, I see no one. Learning Council. So on to opportunities. So the next question was, what are the top 3 opportunities that you heard for the community? Michael, you look like you want to come right back up.
Well, might as well let's go in the same order, folks. Why not? It's awesome that Andy's here, actually, because this is one of the things that was brought up to me. Somebody mentioned to me one of the greatest resources we have in Port Alberni isn't forestry, isn't the waterfront or anything like that. It's the cultural experience that Port Alberni has to offer to people. We talk about wanting to bring tourism to town, and we have such a rich cultural history with our local bands here, but yet there is literally nothing when you're going down Johnston to engage them in that. Like, this sounds horrible, but the only place that sells First Nations jewelry near or around Johnson is a pawn shop. That's kind of a silly thing, right? Especially when we have, how many people living? 3,000, right? This is, we literally having a cultural center of some kind as on the main drag will probably do us a heck of a lot of good at stopping people coming through town. And this would be a great community engagement, right? So, as far as prior to this too, sorry, I'm talking about housing or opioids or any of that stuff, because really, to be honest with you, if you hadn't heard about it, probably in the wrong job. So, broken window, community engagement issue there. Having a council liaison or a city liaison for volunteering, put your community to work. All right, somebody's going to come up here and complain about a dirty, empty lot. Give them the tools to go clean it. All right, my neighborhood, I got Telus boxes on every corner. Snot has been rampant. That box has been tagged for 2 years. I'd go paint it if I wasn't going to get banged up on a vandalism thing, right? Literally, give me a can of paint. I'll go down and take care of it. I mean, Kevin did a graffiti cleanup initiative. Come by City Hall, pick it up, go clean the graffiti, right? I know you guys got liability issues and stuff like that. It's not my problem. That's on you guys. I didn't get elected. Right? But at the end of the day, your community wants to, they're going to come up here and complain, put them to work. What do we got here? I'm going to take a thing from Neil here. I'm just going to slow it down. Housing initiatives. Be creative, guys. Be aggressively creative. You talk about laneway housing, like this 30,000 foot view, like it's some kind of ethereal model. You know what? Give me a bundled package that has all the permitting, bylaw stuff that I have to go through. Let me walk into City Hall and be like, hey, I got a 5,000 square foot house. I want to put a suite in it. How do I do that? Without having to like come back here 10 times to figure it out and then screw it up, right? Which costs me money. So if it's easy, then I will build it, right? And then branding. Oh my God. It's been better over the last 5 years that I've been here, but yeah, straight up, we don't even have a sign. Where's the welcome to Port Alberni sign? How do you know that you're in Port Alberni? Yes, welcome to the Alberni Valley. That's nice, but literally no sign. So, low barrier for entry. Put a sign up that says, welcome to the town that you're in. Rest of it should probably fall into place. You can start from there and work backwards. There's your 3 community opportunities.
Thank you.
No worries.
Kevin?
Sorry, I stole the binder idea.
Yeah, I did put forward a few years ago about the idea of a binder system to allow businesses, and that same would apply certainly for opening suites as well. I do think that the relevant topic about safety for renters is definitely an issue. Malcolm Meninga had quite a few properties in the community, and he backed out of them through stress of having one after another of renters who became difficult to deal with, and it became something that stressed him out. So he inherently then started to sell off his properties, which is very common in that model. People purchase properties for investment. They wanted to keep them and then sell them in the future. They were renting them, but the hassle of renting to somebody, it seems that the rental board is definitely more in favor of the person renting than the person who's putting their property up for rent, and then having all this issue, and then they're taken as the bad guy. And it is true, there's lots of bad landlords as well. But myself, I have a 1,200 square foot suite that's rentable, but my wife wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, so we just have a big empty space in our house that we fill with junk. That's really what we do with our space. But we could rent it, but we're not inclined to because of the fear of getting involved in something that we can't then undo after once you've opened the box, Pandora's box, and it's eating you alive. So opportunities, definitely opportunities would come in the form of being prepared for business models. Shari and I had a great discussion a few weeks ago about that, about the fact that we have a kind of a closed, I hate to say in the box kind of mentality about what we perceive Port Alberni is capable of. And yet you look at other communities and they've taken initiatives that are really something that you never even knew existed. And the part that I've been seeing is when a business comes to the community and they want to open up, there is a tendency for a long, drawn-out process because we did not visualize them coming here. And so I talked, unfortunately for her, at length about the idea of having structure set up and then having kind of a genre kind of appear. So, if you brought in a 3D printer farm, for instance, that's an industrial model. It would be considered an industrial model, but it's a low-impact industrial model. We don't currently have any 3D printing farms, but they're very popular. They would make money. They employ people with low skill set. You're looking more for labor models. Textiles, there's tons and tons of models that we could look at and then go ahead and prepare ourselves for that. Determine where we would like them to go, set up zones that they could be applicable in, and then set up a model that we could actually then be ready for them. Because I think the biggest complaint that I get from any business owner coming to the community who has a novel or different or slightly askew model that's not necessarily normal here, the process of understanding it, the process of engaging it takes far too long. They want to make money and they're willing to go to a community like Cumberland, they're going to go to Courtenay, Tofino if it's applicable. Nanaimo is more open to those more novel new ideas, and they snatch up all those great potentials. So that's one of the things I think I saw as an opportunity that we should have taken advantage of. I've had 4 or 5 people try to open businesses, and even in the last few months. And through difficulty of getting in contact with the building owner, this is one of the reasons why I was trying to get this policy with the building owners, to get in contact with the building owner, to deal with all the zoning issues, to deal with the deterioration in the building. There's so many things that are blockading it. We just recently had a person who was trying to open a hair salon, and she actually was at it for 4 months and trying to find an applicable building, trying to find a landlord. To literally find landlords was difficult for her. She ended up buying an existing hair salon. She gave up. She couldn't build a new one. She went and bought an existing one because that was just easier. And so, there isn't always going to be an opportunity to buy an existing model. And so we have to be better prepared to understand what's causing these problems and make better use of it. And that's one of the things I think has been the most deteriorating thing. I still think that the business development program or the business portfolio program that I discussed earlier with many of you would be a very good step. It's relatively inexpensive to get done. It would address a lot of the issues that most of the business owners are finding that's causing the problems and get them on the right page before a bylaw or an infraction or a fine is levied on them, causing a bad taste in their mouth and getting them to kind of unwind once they've started in. And that's, I think, an important model to look at. So as far as opportunities, that's where I see from my vantage point the kind of things we should engage in. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to let candidates talk first, and then I'll get to you, Peter. Okay, Peter, come on up.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Pete Rushman. I've been in town for over 40 years, and I'd like to congratulate you guys for bringing together a very good elected setup, which the council and the mayor, which has open mind to diversification, which over the years past, we somehow passed by due to who knows what reasons. But there's lots of potential now to be able to do stuff, and a lot of potential to do stuff with this gentleman as well. And like I said, tourism is part of something. It is not one industry, because when you talk to people that know a little bit about it, and say, for instance, Tofino, they all go up there and they come back very enlightened, because all it's about cash. There's nothing else going on really, other than going doing a bit of whale watching and a few other things, which will probably end soon. But we have the potential here to generate and create stuff with all the native people that live here, and plus us, and work as a team towards something that should be done. That's my feelings. I wish you all the best. And if there's anything one can do, I definitely keep my eyes and ears open. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Chris?
Yeah, so, I mean, lots of people have already said a lot of the same things that I would. But going, I guess, back to sort of the three opportunities that I heard from the public, it all stems from our challenges, right? Our issues are the same as our opportunities. There are always opportunities to be able to improve on the issues that we have as a community. The biggest one that I heard as far as an untapped potential is our waterfront. You know, seeing Somas Mill close last year, that became a specific place on the waterfront to really look at what can happen after a large space like that opens up on the waterfront. So that's a huge opportunity, I think, that we have to seriously look at as a community. And people were noticing changes in small businesses in town. You know, the Kingsway, Twin City Brewing, the new brewery coming up on Argyle, the Thunderbird apartments. These are all places that have taken our rundown areas and brought them into something new, and really created businesses that are thriving. And places that are thriving. And those kinds of opportunities, I think the model that Kevin Wright has been pushing for many years now is an opportunity for us to expand that and really encourage people to come into the town and invest in the town. And I heard that loud and clear on the campaign. And then the last one is just trying to get more out of our natural assets. More out of all of the spaces that we have around the community. You know, you have these Facebook groups like Vancouver Island Hiking Facebook group that have exploded the amount of people that are just out and exploring places on Vancouver Island. Our Hole in the Wall is a prime example of a place that just in the past few years, I didn't know about it when I was growing up here. And in the past few years, there's dozens, hundreds of people that are visiting that spot. There's no infrastructure there. It's dangerous. It's, you know, all of these things. It's something that we should be investing in as a community. It's a huge opportunity for us to bring people into town and really show off the assets that we've had all along, but haven't had the opportunity to do it. So that's it.
Thank you. Yep. Who have I missed here? John?
We're talking opportunities now?
Opportunities.
And then after this, we're going to talk about what we might have done?
That's right.
Is that?
You have to come up 3 times.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Hi, Todd, how are you? Yeah, thanks. So, the thing, I try and mention something that we haven't talked about already, like Chris mentioned hole in the wall, that's a great example. We've actually had a few discussions with companies in the recent past to try and get that going, particularly looking at the cruise ships coming in and that possibility. But the thing that I kept running across, and it's kind of a large concept, but it seemed to go over really well with the people that we were talking to, was the development of, like we've got a large group of people who are kind of against heavy industry, but then there's a large group of people who recognize the value of industrial growth as well. So the concept of developing an industrial park, an industrial zone that's outside of the urban core of the community, which kind of ties in with so many issues, like it allows for waterfront development, for example. It ties in with the concept of a highway bypassing the internal part of the community, so we kind of deal with that and, that traffic issue that we have in the inside of town. It ties into the development of the port, which nobody's really touched on unless I missed it there. Whether it's the LNG or the transshipping container or whatever else the port might come up with in the coming decades. So if we're looking at, for example, the area that quite often came up in my discussions was developing out towards the Cameron Shops area, and have discussions with the electoral area that looks after that, the industry that own property in that area, and see if we could develop an industrial zone so that we could look after providing the services that industry needs, whether it's water, power, and transportation corridors where they can transport things freely without, upsetting everybody in the core of the community. And then also it feeds into, like I said, developing the port down the Sarita area and industrial growth in a way that's compatible with the way our community can grow in the future. So that's one of the opportunities that I was sort of, talking about, and people were reflecting on, and it seemed to be, a good appetite there for conversing about that. So that's what I'd mention. Thanks.
Thank you. Todd?
Once again, I hope I'm not wasting my breath, because I'm not going to tell you something you don't already know, right? You all know that there are opportunities, and there are things you can do, and there's things you can't do, right? You can't change provincial legislation, but you do have an opportunity to make things better. And as trite as that may sound, there are obviously specific applications. There's lots of ideas. Some you can do, some you can't do, right? What you can do is get on with making things better. So that means stop wasting time talking about the things you can't do. I recognize good ideas that people in the community have, but be clear in your communication, which is one of the suggestions that other people have put to you. Communicate to them that we can't do that. Thank you very much. We're not going to waste your tax dollars on talking about that again and again and again. Some specific things you can do to make things better are, like John suggested, a truck route, an industrial zone, but only where you have the power to do that. The advertising of the city was also suggested, and I would suggest that's one thing you can do to make things better, because we know it's better already. So it does no good for everyone to sit around and pat each other on the back and say, oh, those people in Toronto did a media story on how bad Port Alberni is, but we know it's better. Well, it does no good unless we actually tell them it's better. So advertising was suggested, promoting the city, maybe use of metrics that are appropriate to what the city has, instead of letting others judge us on their metrics. I don't care if we only have one Starbucks. We've got great airports. We've got whatever you choose the metrics to be, base the assessment on that. The opportunity that I would say that is dangerous is not making things better. If you fail to make things better and you fail to get moving, you will end up being the same council that we've had for many many years where we talk about McLean's Mill, and we talk about 3rd Avenue, and we talk about truck bypasses, and we talk about the holes in the middle of 6th Avenue, and nothing changes.
Thank you. Aaron?
Thanks. Yeah, okay, same kind of thing, except for, I'm just trying to think of it a little bit differently here. There's no sorting hat, and we all kind of get placed in our jobs. You guys are the best people for this position. You're voted there by everybody. All we can do is help bring some ideas forward. We hear about things like crime. We hear about things like housing and the cost. Nobody wants to rent uptown. I'm not a realtor, but I kind of understand if I pay everybody at the 7-Eleven $32 an hour, you guys are paying $6 for a chocolate bar. Now, unless somebody's paying you $58 an hour to cut wood at the mill, it's not going to work. So the town needs money. We got to build some stuff. We can raise the cost on everything all day long. All it's going to do is create the divide, right? Some people got some stuff. Some people don't have some stuff. There's not a lot of happy medium. Now, I don't think that you really have to work 110 hours every 2 weeks to get by. But my building cost me $200 a month in rent, or just property insurance, right? This is before building insurance, before mortgage, before anything else. If that doubles in the next 5 or 10 years, because we know water's going up 5% a year, we know everything's going up, it's going to be really, really hard to maintain that. One of the things that you guys talk about housing, but nobody wants to rent their house. If I call the housing board, it doesn't do anything. Now, I've got a mechanic. He's an okay mechanic. When you see him with kids, that guy should have been a teacher. Absolutely, bar none. He missed his calling. You guys have a power. Now that you're the mayor and you guys are elected councilors, you don't have to do a lot of the things. Like they say, a lot of the issues before you guys aren't your problem. Some people, like this meeting, are above and beyond. It's not necessary, but you guys are doing it. Is it possible to request a meeting with the landlord tenancy branch? Like the people that actually make these rules? Because there are people in town with places for rent. I have a place I'd rent, but I've been on both sides of that. I've seen it. I'm way too scared to rent to somebody that's just going to give me problems. I had a property management company in town. I backed away from it because you're going in there like this. It's an absolute mess. Now, if as council, they sit down and say, look, we need to rent out stuff. We want to create initiatives so that we can get people, we can give bonuses, we can give all kinds of tax breaks. Doesn't matter what kind of policies you guys come up with, because at the end of the day, the citizens aren't worried about you. They're worried about this Landlord Tenancy Act, which is an absolute mess. It hasn't been dealt with in years. If I call the welfare department or the social assistance planning guys, they don't care about me. The MP doesn't care about me. Not that he doesn't care about me, but your voice carries so much more weight than an unelected person or the average citizen. Now, welfare hasn't gone up in how long? Disability hasn't gone up in how long? But the landlords are allowed a 4% increase every year. We really got to get on those guys. You got to call meetings with the social development people, like the actual, like whoever's in charge of the welfare office. I don't know who these people are, but I bet you guys got like a Batmobile phone back there somewhere, and it just, that's the direct line right to the guy. But if you call the meeting, it holds that much more weight than if I do. And you can't give these guys $475, $375 for rent, and then expect them to find their way into an $1,100 a month apartment. That's where the problem is. It's not with these committees. It's not with all these, it's cool. The initiative's great. Everybody wants to help, but there are boards that make the final ruling, and your guys' voice carries a lot more. RCMP, they're not doing a bad job, right? Todd can probably speak to this a little better, but maybe the city, as a legal entity, needs to actually request a report from the Justice Department or whoever actually writes these reports to see. Let's see what Inspector Hunter says our last 10 issues were. If it's property crime, like the low, whatever it's called, like petty theft or whatever it is, are we sentencing the people? Is Judge Webb actually doing an appropriate job? Because there's other places in Canada, like we're being compared to Toronto, but our crime, the cops are doing it. But I can't remember the last time anybody was arrested for selling opioids. Can't tell you, probably a couple of years. Not that the RCMP aren't concerned. They're just probably too busy arresting the same guy for stealing a lawnmower. So maybe we need to actually petition the Justice Committee and see if we're, as a city, being treated fair, or maybe the judge has to go. But it's not the RCMP as a whole. And we can't arrest our way out of it. We can't do that, but we can request of these larger committees. That's the only thing I know, like, for making it better. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think I've gotten to everyone. Okay, council. And I will just start by saying that I actually didn't write down 3 opportunities because I think actually Chris put it very well that our opportunities, in my opinion, really are our challenges. So I did write a couple notes while people were speaking, but I think that additional to the challenges that I noted, and most people have noted similar, I think that there's an opportunity for us. One of our biggest opportunities is in our vacant storefronts, because that's an opportunity to really create whatever we want as a community, because we have so many lumped together. And then the only other thing I will touch on before I let council go is that I really liked the comment, actually, Todd, that you made, tell the community the things that we can't do. And that kind of goes back to what a lot of people mentioned about not understanding city processes. And I think there's this mentality that the city is responsible for everything. Certainly people think that we are responsible for a lot that we don't have the ability to do, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the right staff. Telling the public, that that's not our area, this is where you should go, rather than just taking those concerns, is something we don't always do. So thanks for that. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As in our conversation today, we got to stop them before they leave town. Mm-hmm. We've got to come up with that tool to get people to pull over, to get them to say, hey, this is not a bad place to be. It's not just that's not a quick stop for fuel and a bag of chips and a 12-pack of beer and heading to the coast. We got to stop them. We got to keep them here for a little while. And again, agreeing with my colleagues out there that beautification has got to be extended past Johnson Road. I mean, we concentrated on that in the last term, and they got the lights, they got the bells, they got the whistles, and the rest of the community got a bulb. So, and then my third thing would be to get on the crime reduction, and like I say, I hope the livability thing, we can improve our livability to reduce the crime.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My top 3 opportunities that I heard were tourism. We need more positive marking on Port Alberni. Secondly, trails. We have a great opportunity with the trails in our community. However, there's a lack of signage and a lack of promotion of those trails. We want to keep them a secret, but we need to promote those opportunities. And thirdly is the waterfront, but I heard 2 different things. We need more industrial development on the waterfront, and the other thing was we need less industrial development on the waterfront. So, yeah, I know.
Balance that.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Paulson.
One thing that struck me in the conversation going back, and I can't remember who brought it up, but was we're missing in our First Nations, and our community is missing the First Nations cultural element. And I always have had this vision of a Newton North Cultural Centre, and it doesn't have to be as big as the Polynesian Cultural Centre, obviously in Hawaii, but if you want to see the effect, I mean, we know these people on a daily basis, but if you want to see the effect that the First Nations culture can have on somebody, I don't know how many people have tickets to the hockey game on Friday night. And so we've got a team from Kazakhstan and a team from Switzerland there. And when we bring the First Nations component into the opening ceremonies that night, I want you to have a quick look at both players' benches where the coaches and trainers and managers are, and also the players' reaction to the First Nations culture. And when we hosted U17 here, one of the things that I talked to the Russians about, I said, you guys, when we had the singers and dancers and the drummers, I said, it's almost beyond protocol, but you guys got right in there with your cameras and you're underneath them and you're looking at them. And they came right out to me and they said, this is one of the reasons why we came to Canada. It's one of the reasons why we came to the West Coast, is we wanted to see your First Nations culture. The second thing that kind of jumped into my mind, and Ms. Deacon, you're hiding back there. I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the Alberni Valley Learning Council. And there's an opportunity there and around that Alberni Valley Learning Council, and I don't know if I've got everybody in here, but School District 70, North Island College, First Nations are represented there. There's members of council, various agencies throughout town, and also industry are represented at those particular meetings, and they're quarterly. And School District 70 and North Island College are always looking for input. And please come and see me, or I know that Terry Deacon goes to those meetings. And if there's something that you would like us to bring forward, they're trying to be proactive. North Island College is trying to be proactive, and so is School District 70 with regards to needs that might come down the pipe here next year, 5 years down the road. And certainly the discussion has been around the LNG plant and transshipment hub, and their question is, what are we going to need on the education front to teach these people how to evolve in that industry? And the last meeting I went to, there was a member from, I think it was from Western Forest Products, and they said they are scrambling. They are having the hardest time in the world to find qualified people to operate equipment in the forest industry, and they're scrambling. And the other one that came up was the nursing profession, and there are not enough nurses in this world. So if you've got a son or daughter that's interested in that area, that's a great area. They are oversubscribed at North Island College in their program, but those are some opportunities. But we need to be proactive. We need to look down the road at what might be coming to our community and say, look, our local workforce, if you want them presently to go into training, we can do that so that when you're ready to open, we've got a workforce that can go to work for you. I don't know, Terry, if I missed anything there, if you want to add something, but I'd appreciate you filling in the blanks.
No, I think you did a really good job. North Island College is open to partnering with anybody in the community, with employers, with industry. They are so open and so willing, and right now they have a partnership going with the farm project that the shelter's doing, and so they've got some great things going on. And the Learning Council is a great place to bring those concerns or those initiatives to.
Thank you.
So please, if you have thoughts, bring them to us that we're maybe missing, and Terry's here, and there's a number of other people that attend the meetings, but we'll take it there and have a chat for sure.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Solda.
Yeah, thank you. When I think of opportunities, I think of a more positive opportunities in this community. I just look out and look at the mountains, the hills, the trees, what we have in this community. It's beautiful. I believe we're the best kept secret on the island. When I look at what's happening south of the island, the rent, you can't afford it. You hear a lot of people talking about why they come to this community. You look at the north of the island, further north, Campbell River. Look at how expensive it is. Go to Comox. It's really expensive. There's people there that can't afford the housing there because of the opportunities there. Then I look in our area, and I look at the West Coast. West Coast has outpriced themselves. Who can afford that, right? And there's nowhere to live. Then I look at Port Alberni, and I look at what we have in Port Alberni, and I look at being positive. I get a lot of tourists that come through, sold as an example. I get, and I ask them, some of them are here to look at opportunities in Port Alberni and move to Port Alberni. So I ask them why they are doing that. Why are you here? And a lot of people look at our education facilities. We have an amazing opportunity with our education, ADSS, North Island College, also the up at the disability. And then I look at, then other people are talking about the opportunity for the arts. We have great arts programs here. We have all different areas of sports. We have, which includes fishing and that, the opportunities and stuff, and the trails and that. That all is part of it. I look at the services. I know one person who moved here years ago with her daughter because she had some, she's handicapped. And from where her community to our community, we had a lot of services that were available here. So now her husband still lives in Alberta, and she lives here, and she's been here for years and years, and they just kind of meet. It's a long distance marriage. But the whole point is that we have those opportunities. The lifestyle. A lot of people have said they moved from Vancouver or from south or north of the island because of our lifestyle. It's very laid back, and they felt very safe here, although people that live in the Alberni Valley don't feel totally safe, but they come from places like Surrey and stuff like that, total difference. So it's very, very relaxing for them here. The partnerships, we have a lot of opportunities to partnership with our First Nation governments, and we are doing more and more of that through the city, regional district, and just as individual, we see more and more of that happening. So there's a lot of good opportunities. The only thing that people don't have an understanding, sorry, it's a lot more, maybe I hit more 6. The opportunities, a lot of people think that council has to solve everything, but the problem is a lot of people don't realize the community charter only allows us to do certain things. What is our mandate? Maybe people don't realize what a city's council's mandate is, you know, which is infrastructure and making sure that it's livable. The other thing is our bylaws only allow us, although we can change our bylaws, allow us to do certain things too. So I think it's a lot of understanding on that. So those, I tried to look at positive on that, and so that's where I'm at. And we need to be more self-promoting on our community, and not when people say to you, Port Alberni's a dump. No, it's not. You know, I've been to dumps. I've lived in dumps too, and we need to be more positive on that. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
I'll try to keep mine to about 3 or 4 opportunities. So I think it's been raised, I know John Douglas raised the industrial park, and I believe Pat's looking into that. I think there's a huge opportunity if industries want to come to town, that we have a place ready for them. We should have a catalog of what's available, whether it's industrial lands or vacant lots or vacant buildings. The Somas sawmill site is going to be a huge opportunity. It's been said many times that probably the days of one big operation going in there may be over. Certainly still really good industrial lands. Potential to carve it up, maybe use a little bit for more of a recreational use, but no doubt that there's lots of opportunity there for heavy industries still. The community forest is an opportunity. I think Councillor Paulson talked about, somebody from Western Forest Products talking about the need for people in the forest industry, operators in particular. It's huge. It's we have the average age is probably in the mid-50s now for many of the jobs in the forest industry. People are retiring, and nobody's training the new workforce. Also, this is still a Port Alberni and an Alberni thing, where we have 2 separate kind of downtown cores mixed in with the fact that we have the malls and the 10th Avenue Plaza, and things are spread out all over this town. It's really time to connect the town, to start infilling the empty lots, the empty buildings, and to connect everything. And I'd love to see something like the dike walkway connect all the way through to Cluda Sea Marina, Harbor Key, Victoria Key, Harbor Key, and maybe one day all the way out to the park at the old plywood property. And lastly, I believe this is being worked on in the bylaws. The bylaw officers are looking at bylaws to deal with the empty lots and the empty buildings, and I don't think that can come quick enough. So there's lots of opportunities and lots of things I think are being worked on as we sit here. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Poon.
Thank you. Well, lots of people have said a lot of things, and I think one of our biggest opportunities is tourism. And we don't need to be a pit stop. We can be a destination on our own. We don't need to be on the way to Tofino. We don't need to be a stop on the way to something. We can be our own destination. We have enough things to do here to sustain a week-long holiday. But what we do need to do right now is to promote our city and to promote the culture that we have here. And when I travel around BC and I meet people, I always tell people about how great Port Alberni is. And I don't tell them to come visit Port Alberni on the way to Tofino. I tell them, come visit Port Alberni, because there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think, so I think tourism is very important. And secondly, I think that for the opportunities that we have in town, we can look within our town for opportunities. We can have more infill. We don't need an urban sprawl. We have enough land within our town to go ahead with projects that can benefit our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the last question that we asked candidates, and if council has one answer for this one. I might not hold myself to one. So the last question was, if you had been elected, what would be one initiative that you hope to accomplish during your term? Would anybody like to come and answer that question? Michael.
If I read this question correctly here, you really just wanted one initiative. I would have fired myself if I only had one initiative.
We didn't want to let people go on for too long.
No, fair enough. So if I had been elected to council, if I was successful, my goal was actually, or one of my desires was to work with Kevin in developing either a makerspace, because I would have been a councillor and maybe not appropriate to do it myself, which I'm trying to do myself now, but also working with him with the Sprout community development and finding ways to try to help business development in the community. I have the podium, so I'm going to break the rules. And there's also not a countdown timer. So I would have had it 1 day a week at very minimum, where I would have been actively in the community, either, hammering, digging, doing something, sitting in a coffee shop, what have you, where I was tangibly interacting, not writing a report, not reading a report, actually trying to get something, real world, immediate. Some of you guys brought this up here, the community charter, the things you can't do. If you were my employee and you started telling me what you couldn't do, we would have concerns, right? That's all fine and dandy. There's things you can't do. Start listening to what people want is the first step in that, right? If I come to you and I say, hey, I need you to fix this, and you're like, well, sorry, I can't do that. It's not in my community charter. You got to go talk to this person, right? That doesn't help me, right? I need it fixed. If you guys have the resources to talk to that person, like Aaron was talking about, then talk to them. Help me help myself, right? Hearing I can't is just disheartening, right? I mean, community with heart. And then creating a list and a public list of the projects you're working on. I know that you guys we have agendas, and we have all these other things, but show me the percentages done. How much time do you have left on that task? Show me that you've started something and finished something, and have an end result of it. Those are my goals to actually accomplish things. So,
thank you. And just to clarify, we certainly can advocate and have meetings with people. All I meant by that, but was that
totally not a shot across anybody.
No, but just so you know,
yes.
we definitely can. Even if it's not within our mandate to do, we can still influence. We just don't have the authority to create new taxes.
No.
Who would like to come next? Kevin?
So again, back to the conversation that Shari and I had a couple of weeks ago, and it was really rewarding to talk to her because I know that we were basically kind of hitting on all cylinders with that one. Tourism definitely is something we could consider as a facet of what we're looking at. But what I've been looking at and what I've been studying with communities that have made this transition, not wholly, you're looking at places like Nelson, Squamish, Sicamous, places that have transitioned away from resource-based community into a more whole model of economy. They did not go at tourism for tourism's sake. What they tried to do, what I think they've succeeded in, is building a culture and a community, working with their culture, and built on the model where people wanted to be part of it. Just like we were talking with Ron was talking about, is that we have an amazing opportunity to build a community that we actually want. Now, as I've made very clear to the community, we have approximately 100 empty buildings in the community, and it's depressing to think about that, but from an entrepreneur standpoint, I see it as huge opportunity. If we had 6 or 7 empty buildings, we couldn't transition our culture or our community's model very easily. But with 100 empty spaces, we can sit down and plan the future and the trajectory of our community. And it has to be based around the community's whole self. If you look at what's happening for Cumberland, for instance, what's happening with Tofino and Salmon Arm, for the good examples of communities that are doing a healthy change, they are not focusing on the tourism model as it's a standalone. What they're doing is they're creating a culture and an existence that is making people want to be part of it, visit it, and then absorb it. So when you're dealing with tourism, the 3 things I like to really try to push on what tourism makes sense for is experience, education, and enlightenment. Those are the 3 E's I like to call them when you talk about tourism. If you go to a place and you feel a sense of enlightenment by experiencing, you'll likely want to return to that. If you've gained something emotionally, you'll want to experience that. And if you gain an education, especially through culture, you'll want to experience that again. And then, of course, you'll advocate for that. So when you visit places that are like that, it creates a sense of connection and of growing as a human being. And so just putting things on the road, just putting elements in the path does not necessarily help out. So one of the reasons why I've always advocated for Uptown being turned into our cultural community core and not a tourism area was for that very fact. I thought if we could build our community here and then focus on elements to make, because I do see Johnson as the front door. So if you're talking real estate wise, definitely paint the door, clean the shutters, put out some plants and so forth. But you want to invite people into your living room, into your community space. And this area, it really has to be the community space. It's where our services are. It's where City Hall is. It's where the courthouse is. It's where the core of our services are. So it's relative when people come to invest in our community and live in our community, if they're considering it, they come here. And if you go to most communities around the province, you'll see that a 3 radius block around their city hall is very important for them to keep to a certain level of cleanliness and hopefully opportunity. And it makes a huge difference for investors to come to a community, because if we come here, and this is where we do our business, we've done a great job with City Hall, but you go half a block that way or half a block that way or half a block that way, and you've got broken sidewalks and graffiti and boarded up buildings and broken windows, and that, you know, I know that that's a passion for Ron. Those are the types of things that need to be addressed, and in short order. So one of the reasons why I was trying to get the Business Development Center going is because as much as we need to educate employees to have better skills, we need better business owners to have better skills. There's a tremendous amount of people in the community. We have roughly 40,000 people living in the Greater Valley. I only need to find 30 or 40 of them who are interested in opening businesses. Doesn't mean that they are going to be good at it. They have passion for it. And the issue we've been running into more often than not is people coming to open a business with a limited skill set, or at least limited understanding, and they make a lot of assumptions. They don't deal with the city well. The city comes down on them hard because they didn't know the questions to ask. And so we have to educate the business owners just as much as the employees, because if we don't do both, we may have a business owner open a business, hire those employees, and then they quickly go out of business because they don't know how to run a business properly. And so we've really fallen off the rails on that. And I know it's one more thing, but I'm sorry. The turbo, yeah. The biggest thing I think that we can do, and I know that Shari's already doing a lot of it, and it was one thing I noticed very, very prevalent, is that we have to get out of the valley. We have to start sharing ourselves with other communities, Qualicum, Parksville, Nanaimo, Ladysmith, Tofino, Ucluelet, Cumberland. And we have to make better exchanges with them. We have to become partners in a regional model, because if we work regionally, we'll be able to take advantage of their stuff and they'll be able to take advantage of our stuff. We will share. And especially when it comes down to industry, a lot of communities are actually trying to back out of industry. They don't see any virtue in it for themselves. And so people may come to those communities to actually open an industry model, and we're open to it. But we don't have a communication model going, so we're not actually exchanging with them. So if we actually create a good personal relationship with as many opportunities as possible in the region, we can actually share opportunities. And if we find something we can't service, we can then shift it to another community and they'll see a benefit to us. So we definitely have to stand on the rim of the valley and look outward and start seeing what people are doing, but also collaborate and cooperate with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris?
All right, I'll try to keep it like initiatives. I'll try to keep it like points. Actually, Davina, could you go to page 10 on the agenda, since it's already on there? Might as well be there. It might as well be there.
Can you bring it up, please?
I think it's on. I think it's page 10. Is that one? Yeah, that one.
This is my last paycheck.
So, like Michael said, there's a million things that we could do, and we should be doing a lot of things, and all of you will have initiatives that you will want to do. So I tried to think of things that were very concrete and initiatives. Obviously, there's one initiative I think that is the time is right for it, but I'll get to that in a second. So I had a whole list of initiatives in there, an E&N rail trail, like Councillor Corbeil was saying, being able to expand our dike system, which is just a fantastic path that the community's had for the past 30 years. But it's been the same path for the past 30 years. We can expand that, and that's something that we can do very easily as a community, and would have a huge impact. Another thing that is sort of infrastructure related is continuing to improve our infrastructure for bicycles, and that ties into that rail trail type initiative as well. We have an example of a bike system that's not safe, and we've seen the impact of that. And those are things that we can do as a city to make our city safer for people on bikes or pedestrians or whatever. Stuff that we can do that will address the things that we can't do right? Community charter type stuff, advocating at the province. We have a serious issue with our firefighting model in the city. We can't sustain the amount of investment that we currently have in our firefighters. What's that going to look like? And we're not the only ones. So why aren't we as a city advocating for a new kind of solution at the provincial level to be able to keep our firefighters, professional firefighters, the way they are, if that's a model that makes sense, and be able to sustain it in the long term, because today it's not sustainable. There's a few others in there, but the one I would have really focused on, and I picked it because right after the election, there was a bunch of news articles that came out sort of related to it, and that's regional transit and talking about regional initiatives with Parksville, with Nanaimo, with other island communities. This came out in November, but there's a good article from the Souk Mirror, oddly, and it said the regional district of Nanaimo Director of Transportation Daniel Pierce said in his report that at a transit committee that the island's population is growing by 5% between the two censuses, so 2011, 2016. And he was making the point around this growth driving the need for intercity transit between all of our communities on the island. So I think this is a really amazing time to be able to sort of strike where the iron is hot, partner with people like Nanaimo, like Parksville, like Qualicum, like Ladysmith. These are all communities that are looking at intercity connections between their communities to be able to ensure that seniors can get to their hospital appointments and clinic appointments, so that people who are going away on day trips or whatever can do that and not have to take a car. I've been riding buses on the Nanaimo system for 20 years, and you see the growth that happens as soon as something is extended. People do come to it, build it and they will come. But that's just an initiative I think that the council could take on and work with other communities on the island and see real growth and benefit for First Nations as well. I pick up hitchhikers going back and forth to work throughout the year. A vast majority of them are First Nations. People have no ability to get out of the city if they don't have a vehicle, right? How do people get out of the city if they don't have a vehicle? There's tons of people in the city here, whether they're First Nations, whether they're poor, whether they're disabled. There's lots of different reasons that people just can't get out. So give them the opportunity to do that, and you'll see great benefit from it. That's it.
Thank you. Great initiatives, not one initiative, but thank you anyways.
Oh, nobody can listen to that. I mean, like, straight up.
Todd, do you want?
Hey, can you pull up the question? So, yeah, there's the question. So there's one initiative. What's the one initiative that I would hope to accomplish by the end of my term? Well, again, what can we do? What can't we do? I really applaud everybody for all their great ideas about all the things that need to be changed. But there is a process, and we should understand the process. We can lobby government, but there's something called UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities. That's the lobbying group for municipalities. I know council knows. I know Helen knows. She went to the meeting. Last one anyways. So there are things council can do, but we can't just go and change the charter. That's provincial legislation. Sorry, guys. That's the way it is. So you can influence, but there's some things you just can't outright take out your pen and do. And so again, I say, let's focus on what we can do, not what we can't do. It's great to look at other municipalities and see what they do, but we don't need to be them. Like to be a fly on the wall at the Squamish council meeting. Are they saying, you should look at Port Alberni and see what they're doing over there? It's really successful. because we need to not try to be somebody else. We need to be ourselves. The one thing that I would do would not make a goal, but would be to make a resolution. A resolution is a way that you describe how you're going to behave, how you're going to affect your life. It's not an end-term goal. So we are not going to have 3 more tourist facilities. We are not going to achieve a tax inflation rate of only 2%. We are going to have a resolution that we can carry with ourselves through our entire term to, and I'll summarize it in my words, make things better. But that includes things like keeping taxes low. It includes things like improving the economy. But it's a continuing goal, not an end product. During the campaign, a number of candidates said, if I'm elected, I will do this. I will use my power to bring my corporate friends to open businesses in town. Well, I find that a bit of a pet peeve for me, because what I'm going to do anyways. I thank and applaud all the members of council, because what they are doing is public service. I was asked if I was sad I wasn't elected. I said no, because I will continue doing public service. And I thank you all for doing that. I'm going to look at the man in the mirror. I'm going to continue to try and make things better. I saw that there was a need for a Santa Claus, and I grew a beard.
Thank you. Aaron?
I agree with a lot of what Todd said there. I don't take you can't do this very well either. In fact, I'm probably going to do it anyway, which is another reason with things like the charter. When it comes to marijuana, that's where Port Alberni actually messed up. The City of Vancouver actually ratified their Charter of Rights to allow for illegalities. We won't get into that, but if it's written on paper, you change it. Tear it up, change it. If the municipality or the BC, whatever that you went to, they're the lobbying guys, might not be the council's part to do it. I probably wouldn't have been the best counselor in the room, but I'd probably wrap one up, burn it, and write the letter anyway. Fire it off. No skin off my back. When it comes to initiatives, I would definitely not be looking for a way to raise taxes. But one initiative I would have tried to do is expand the tax base. So where is Port Alberni to you guys? Like when you come in, Mike pointed out there's no signs. To me, the Port Alberni starts at the info center, straight up. It's not at Walmart, because that's where it is, right? Right at the Walmart Road. It's at the info center. That's where I come into Port Alberni. Sorry, Dennis, see you wherever you're at, but throw some bucks in the pot, you got them, right? That's a lot of industrial land up there, or whatever it's kind of zoned as. There's a lot of extra money that would come from that way. I don't know what it would require as far as street lights and sewer and stuff, but to me that seems like a pretty easy one. Again, it's just zoning and whatever else, but to me that would have been a fairly easy one to bring forward. There's a lot of good ideas that we could bring forward, but really it's pretty much you guys just listen to the public. You're not here to bring forth your own super, I'm going to push this for 4 years and then I'm out. It's really you guys depend on the public's idea to come forward and making it like John brought up the coffee with the mayor and stuff like that. We personally met for coffee there the one time, and it was actually one of the best ways that I had for feeling comfortable about, okay, maybe it is okay. I'm not the favorite person in council to see when he comes up, you know what I mean? There's a couple of us. Hey, Neil, like I see you every time. There's like only a few members, Jim, few people that come all the time. It would be nice out of the 16,000 people if more people could come. So for every guy like me that you engage, I'll tell 5 more people, if you got a question, it's okay. If you're not comfortable, go and send me. But when you guys get out in the public and stuff like that, I feel like there are a lot of people with questions. Myself, I've been trying to do this rezoning for years. It took a long time for me to understand the process, right? And there's a lot of please and thank yous. There's a lot of jumping up and down frustrated. And the people that work in the basement there, they're really, really good with trying to work you through it. Sometimes it's the public that's coming to them without knowing, like Kevin mentioned, a binder type system, so that, I mean, I've been to City Hall 20 times trying to figure out how to do this, the right picture, the wrong picture, I got the wrong sign, I made the wrong sign, there's $200 out the window. There are ways to make the process simpler, for sure, and I would have tried to focus on that kind of stuff instead of trying to just change the world in 4 years. I can only go with the stuff that you guys did in the last 4 and try and make it a little smoother, but definitely not reinvent the wheel. Thanks.
Thank you very much. John?
Hi. You know, we could talk for years, right? So, but we're not going to. I'm going to talk for about half a Kevin. Okay. Or maybe a third of a Pat Deacon, you know? Is Pat still here? Yeah. One of the things we always joked about is we were going to give Deacon like a big sand clock, you know, at council. Right, just to kind of keep him under there. Anyway, so that's one of the opportunities that we were going to work on. But one thing I just say to remind people, like we talk about stuff, and sometimes we get down, like we live in a fantastic community. Like this is just a fantastic community. There's no ifs, ands about it, right? There's lots of challenges, but every community out there has challenges. But I mean, we beat the heck out of so many other communities. It's a great place to live. And one of the really great places about it is there's so much that we can do to make it even better, you know. But so that's what I think is something that we need to keep pushing out there. Is like we live like in a great place, you know. So it's great. Like when I was mayor, you know, I got free tickets to David Letterman's show because I wrote a letter to him, said I live in the worst city in Canada, you know, and it was a great opener. And then, you know, it was, you know, we just sort of capitalized that. And then the TV crews came into the city and all these people started going on TV talking about what a wonderful place we live in. So it actually brought out sort of the opposite, you know, it brought out the pride in the community. So it's kind of ironic how that happened. But anyway, one of the things I was going to mention is, and I forgot to talk about it earlier, was on January 1st at 1 p.m. we have the polar bear swim. And it's just a fantastic event. Yes, and one of the really nice things about it is that everybody in this room is going to it. You know, like Dan's going to be there, right, and his wife, Chris, and Marita over there is going to be there. Ellen Frood is going to be there. Pam White and her husband, David, are going to be there. Todd's going to be there. Chris is going to, like everybody, Pat Deacon goes in his tuxedo with a martini. You might get Andy there as well. So anyway, January 1st at 1 p.m. we have the Polar Bear Swim where we celebrate the community. We raise funds for the Bread of Life, for the Shelter Society, other nonprofits possibly. But yeah, so that's a little blurb on the Polar Bear Swim. Now, just to get to the point, I'm at about a quarter.
Sorry, wasn't that your one initiative?
Yeah. So the people, one of the things that I'd like to say, and this is what I learned, and I think Cindy and people that have been on council before and that people new will learn, is that it's the people in the community that do the work. And this kind of reflects on what Todd said, right? Like I'm going to carry on and try and work on initiatives that I came across, some of the ones that we talked about today. Kevin's got his initiatives. Chris could have his initiatives. Todd's got his. And it's the people that make up, for example, like Ellen and people that are in the nonprofit organizations that try and get housing and other good things, try and get tourism. The people do the work. It's not the council that does the work. It's not like we vote you in and then we just kick back for another 4 years and get you to do everything. The people do the work. The council can open the doors, help pave the way, provide some guidance, and provide the leverage and the support and stuff that the people needs. And that's why like the informality thing I think helps us too, to develop those corridors of communication so that the people in the community can get these really good initiatives going, and the council is in touch so that they can open those doors and connect the people. This sort of leads into the one thing that I was going to promote, and which has been a topic of discussion, which is an advisory planning commission as an umbrella to provide a model within which the nonprofits in the community can get additional housing. And the city doesn't really have to do any major part in that. They just provide the model of an advisory planning commission that has teeth, that can do a job of connecting all the people in the community with agencies such as, BC Housing, Canadian Mental Health, the Ministry of Housing, and get those initiatives going. So that's one thing that I would have, and hopefully we will continue to work on getting that going. And I think that's a big thing that we could do. The other thing I was just going to mention is hotels, because we didn't touch on that. So, unless I missed it, but the MDRDT, the Municipal District Regional Tax, whatever it is, for hotels. So what I would do is, and encourage us all to work on, and particularly council, do everything you can to get another hotel, a competitive hotel in this community that's got at least 30 or 40 rooms. And with that, at the same time, simultaneously work with the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses to bring that taxation back so that we can get taxation, and then make sure we got a good model so the money's raised or applied directly to tourism initiatives. Because one of the reasons that it was dismantled by the hotel players was they felt that money was being used for sort of trivial pursuits and not pursuits that were benefiting them. So that's one thing that I would really think is another good thing we could work on, is getting another competitive hotel chain in the community and get that taxation model back. Thanks very much for your patience. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Council. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing, okay, because we've expanded everything to, I'm going to go with livability, and I'd like to thank Kevin for his the word I just lost the word, but it's just the beautification shouldn't stop on Johnson Road. It's like he says, our front door has been painted. We've got some plants beside the door. Let's go decorate the living room and the bedroom and the bathroom and the downstairs. So I'm going to stay with livability and follow Kevin's rule about cleaning up the rest of the house.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
I do have 3 pages of goals, but I'm not going to go over them here. I'm going over the Shari on Thursday morning. But John, I'm really glad that you mentioned the MRDT, because that is my first priority, is to be the liaison between the Chamber and the city to implement the MRDT so we can promote tourism in the community, which will lead to more employment, more self-employment opportunities, more taxes. So I think it's just a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Well, it's a good continuing question. I'm like Todd over there. I do stuff outside of council, but I continue. I came here from Edmonton kind of in the mid-'70s, and I still see Port Alberni through different eyes than people who were born and raised here. And I'm one person that loves that drive from Parksville to Port Alberni, around Cameron Lake. Every time I drive it, I love it. I absolutely love it. People who are born and raised here hate it. They see it as an inconvenience. It's a bad thing. But the thing that I love this community. I love the people. We're a great community. We're a great host community when it comes time to do that sort of thing. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm going to continue to do that through my term as council, but I'll continue to do that. And that's that whole image thing that I try and preach. And I preach it to my relatives in Calgary and tell them how great this place is. And every once in a while I get hit with, I had a nephew and his wife came into Port Alberni from Nanaimo the other night to watch their son play hockey, and they came down Johnson Road. And they made a comment to me at the rink. They said, Johnson Road looks absolutely spectacular with the Christmas lights. and the characters and the different kind of characters hanging over Johnson Road. And I said, Jamie, what are you talking about? He says, we don't have anything like that in Nanaimo. I mean, that's who we are. I mean, we're a community that does things right, and we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we are a good place to live. That's all I have to say. I got nothing more to say.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
So I'm going to go a different direction here. I've always said that we have issues on our aging infrastructure, and I'd like to see more work be put into our aging infrastructure so the young people in the future do not have to pay. It's we have pipes from the 40s and stuff like that that need to be changed, and we're just patching them. So let's fix it and start doing it right. And that's really big. That's always been big for me on our infrastructure. Sorry, there's two more. Sure. You knew that. Diversified economy and diversify our economy, and our tax base, of course, will increase, and that will give more opportunities for the young people for jobs, and we'll see more businesses come in if we can expand our economy and our tax base. And also partnerships are very important to me. So that I will leave now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corbiel.
If I was to pick one thing that I hope in my 4 years gets completed, I'd love to see the Alberni Community Forest grow. It's only got about 15,000 cubic meters of cut, which is not a heck of a lot. I would love to see that grow and produce more employment locally. And my vision would be that we have a lot of very experienced people, forestry workers in this community that are retiring out and would be excellent trainers to train the new young people that are wanting to get into the forest industry. So that's what I'd love to see in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Councillor Poon.
It's hard to put it all into one, but I guess I would like to see that we have a larger tax base so that we can improve our infrastructure and provide more employment opportunities too.
Thank you. And my one thing, although my one thing is not one thing, it's a list.
You made the rules.
Sorry. A couple people followed the rules. Well, my overarching one thing would be one goal for me is that we build a strong strategic plan that our entire council really buys into, and we follow that strategic plan over our next 4 years. I think we need to regularly check back with the public, with the community, with council, with staff to make sure that our strategic plan is on point with the needs of the community. But I think at the same time, we need to be willing to say no to initiatives that come in front of us if they are not a part of our strategic plan. So once we build that plan, I want to see our council have that plan guide our next 4 years and not divert from that unless it really makes sense with a change in the community and changing needs. There are a lot of things that I would like to see in that strategic plan, and I have a list of them on a very long note on my computer, but I will save those for our strategic planning session that will be coming up soon. Are there any final comments from the public? Okay, so I want to really thank everyone for coming today. On behalf of council, I think we really appreciate people coming, telling us their feedback and engaging with us on this. I've taken a lot of notes here. We are going to be moving into strategic planning soon, and we are going to engage the community in that through probably some kinds of committee of the whole meetings like this as we work through that plan. So do keep coming to our meetings. The feedback that everybody gives is very important as we build the plan that will hopefully strongly guide us over our next 4 years. Councillor Solda would like me to say Merry Christmas to everyone. And thank you for coming. Would somebody like to move adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second? Second. All in favor?
Santa?
Thank you. Oh yeah, Santa, thank you for coming.
Something